Welcome to Film Forum Presents, a podcast featuring special live events recorded at our theater located at 209 West Houston Street in downtown Manhattan. In this episode, Film Forum presents Bill Forsyth, the Scottish director of modern comedy classics, including Local Hero, Comfort and Joy, Housekeeping, and his beloved 1981 film, Gregory's Girl. Mr. Forsyth, in a rare trip to New York, sat down for a conversation with Film Forum Repertory director Bruce Goldstein on Friday, October 4th, immediately following the opening night screening of a new restoration of Gregory's Girl. Gregory's Girl runs at Film Forum through Thursday, October 10th.
Please welcome writer-director Bill Forsyth.
Thank you.
That's a high stool, you okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any seat, that's great. Oh, I feel like I'm going to the dentist or something.
Have you ever had a half-standing ovation before? Bill, I know you've talked about Gregory's Girl for the last 40 years. You've said to reporters, do I have to yak about that again? But this audience, I would imagine, at least half the audience have never seen it. It's a brand new movie, right?
Fresh
For a lot
meat.
of you.
Yeah, fresh
Okay.
meat. They're great.
Okay, so the big burning question for me is, what's with the penguin?
Well, it really started, obviously when I made it, I was in my late 20s, 30s, and so I hadn't been inside a school for a while. And we were wrecking schools in Cumbernauld, and you
Go
know,
a little
the
closer.
headmaster was kind of showing us around. And it so happened a door opened, and a kid walked out with a paper mache head this size. And it just struck me that it wasn't something that would have happened in the school at the time I went to school. And it just made me realise that schools are little worlds where all these, young people are introduced to all these ideas and concepts, and where things happen, creativity happens, and that's what I was trying to kind of embody. So I don't know I can't remember how it ended up a penguin. But the poor kid inside it, who was the son of a Paddy production manager, he sweated a lot.
I'm sure.
It was tough going.
So Gregory's Girl was actually the first script for a narrative feature that you ever wrote, but it was the second produced. You wanted this to be your first film.
Yes, I did, and I worked. I wrote the script, and then I went to there's a local youth theatre in Glasgow called It wasn't funded; it was an ad hoc thing, just working out one of the community centres by a terrific American stage worker, John Baraldi. You obviously maybe saw his name on the credits, and he had more or less just created this thing out of thin air.
You're talking about the Glasgow Youth Theatre, where many of these actors came from.
It sounds funded and official, but it wasn't. It was just his idea. It happened every Friday night in this community centre. And I was steered towards it. I actually went to the Arts Council in Edinburgh and asked them, I said I want to work with young people. I've got an idea for a movie. And they pointed me there, so kind of bless them for that. And they didn't put any money into it or anything, but they pointed me in the right direction. So I just turned up there one Friday night. I cycled over there, chained my bike to the fence. It's one of the kind of place where you want to be secure, and met John and just said I was a local filmmaker and wanted to get to know actors and work with them. I hadn't ever done that before. And he let me come and hang out on Friday nights and sit in. But I was pretty intimidated because I hadn't worked with actors. And what I did was I got into the habit of just turning up there and going up to the back and watching what he was doing, just sitting there. So after a few weeks, the kids were starting to say, who's that guy? Who's that guy that, it was getting a bit creepy, So John collared me, said, look, you're going to have to, fess up and let them know what you're doing. He says, I'm not going to do it for you, you're going to have to. So the next Friday he said he's going to announce that I'm going to talk. And I was so intimidated by that. It's a terrible thing to have to admit, but I actually got off the train on the way to the youth theatre. I thought, I can't do this.
You were very shy in those days.
It must be, yeah. And the kind of films we made, the documentaries, they were all silent films. And it's a funny experience, how films are about people. The kind of films we made, my memory of it is we would be filming, a fishing boat arriving at a harbour, and some tourists would start to wander into the shop and you say, get out of our film, we're trying to make a film here, get out. And suddenly the reverse thing, I'm trying to get people into my movies. So
You had only actually made films about inanimate objects
yeah,
before
exactly,
this.
yeah. And if you could pan up, you could pan down along, but to keep the people out of it. So as I say, I got off the train and I just had a long think to myself and a long talk to myself, and I said, look, if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen after you go and talk to these kids. It's not going to happen any other way. So I got back on the next train and went in, and I can't remember the details, but that started it. And I ended up going to the youth theatre for over a year in the process of getting to know the kids, and I ended up doing the driving on. They did a tour. They took a play on road, on the road over the school holidays. And I drove the minivan around, 5 or 6 locations around the country with them.
So the Glasgow Youth Theatre, the kids were your first stock company, so to speak.
Yes.
And it was the first project the first film was supposed to be Gregory's Girl.
Yeah. But
so what happened?
Well, I failed to get the BFI in London, British Film Institute. They had a production fund, and it was pretty well designed to help people in my situation. So I applied for some funding there, and at that time I was going to shoot it in 16mm with a reasonable, quite tight budget. So I asked them for £29,000 to cover the whole production cost thing. And the process, it took maybe 4, 5, 6 months. They had different readings of it. First of all, they critiqued the scripts, and it went through a filter process. And I would phone them every month and say, "How are things going?" And they really strung me out. I remember the guy said they were having their meeting on a Thursday, and he would phone me before the end of the working day on the Thursday. So I kind of sit by the phone 4, 5, 6 o'clock, nothing. He didn't phone me. Friday, silence, nothing. He wouldn't even answer the phone on the Friday. I finally got him on Monday morning after a pretty stressed weekend, and he said, they didn't go for it. It has committee.
Did they say it was too commercial?
That's right. Yeah, it was one of these committees made up of professionals, writers, and other filmmakers and producers and things. And I did find out that one of the writers, a script writer guy, he said, yeah, this guy doesn't need any help. If he takes a script around, somebody will finance it. So he doesn't need our money. So that was it. I had to go back to the kids and say, sorry, it hasn't worked out. And it was really in the huff, really, I decided just to do something with the kids. I had, over that period of time getting to know them, I had picked up, obviously things of their own lives and, the way they operated in the city and things. The youth theatre was in the east part of the town, which was, a very deprived area. So kids were quite lively and, had worked out, ways to survive. And so I thought a caper thing would be something up their street, and also it would be reasonably, straightforward. If it was, street level filmmaking, I could do it that way. So the only local thing, commercial thing in operation then was a plumber's warehouse. So I thought, well, we'll use that. We'll start off, get rooted in the community, and so the idea came from there.
So that's your first film, that sinking feeling.
Yeah.
About the heist of sinks.
Yeah.
By some kids, some real idiot kids, actually.
92 stainless steel things, I think, roughly.
But this film holds a Guinness Book of World Record, at least at the time, as...
Well, it's cheapest feature film ever made.
What was the budget?
In the Guinness Book of Records, it was like £2,600. Yeah, we just didn't use money. I rounded up all the people that I used to work with on the little documentary things. I managed to kind of browbeat them into giving me some free labour, and the consensus was that they would give me 3 weeks of their time and equipment.
You used it was a really professional crew.
Oh yeah, they really.
But the film stock was from Short Ends.
No. First of all, the first guy I went to was Mick Coulter, the cameraman, who put the situation to him, told him what I wanted to do. And this will sum up my reputation in the film business at the time in Scotland. He said, Bill, I'll commit to this when you can show me, a box full of stock, He wanted to see 10 400-foot rolls of Eastman colour before he would say, okay.
16, though.
16 mil, yeah.
You thought this was just going to be shown in a few church halls in Glasgow.
That was my plan. I was going to, because I'd been around the country with the kids, I thought, well, maybe next year we'll get a projector, and we'll go around the country and show the film to people, and, in the same way that they had put a play on.
But you showed it in the Edinburgh Film Festival, and it became a hit.
Yeah. First of all, I'll just finish the thing about Mike, because I eventually got on the phone and I started to do a deal, and the Fujicolor was just coming out at that time. They were doing their own 16mm stock. So I ended up at a really good discount, having 10 rolls of 16mm.
It's the best looking.
Fuji.
It's
Yeah.
the best looking and sounding 16mm
Yeah.
feature from that era I've ever seen and heard.
Mick Coulter was quite scathing about it. Although he signed up, he was quite doubtful about it, and he used to kind of wind me up on the set if we were talking about a shot, and and I was saying how far into the shadow are they, the kids coming out when we were filming in the factory in the dark. They had this heist over a weekend. A cameraman in that normally in that situation would say, yeah, well, if I can see them, they just fade into the black, about 12 feet back, and he said they just fade into the green about 10 feet back. He was.
But this success of that sinking feeling, which you didn't really expect, that kind of success led to you're getting a much bigger budget for
Well, that's what
Gregory's Girl.
happened,
Yeah.
Yeah, the festival was in August of that year. We shot in March of '79, and I had the film kind of finished by the August for the Edinburgh Festival, and it was interesting. It was kind of instant, the effect. It really was, because we used to, as local filmmakers, we used to see all these people come up from London, all the name critics, all the people that we used to read the reviews in the Guardian and the Times and all that. They're all there, and they were all in my audience that first morning screening.
You're talking about that sinking feeling.
Yeah.
So, but that
Yeah,
sinking.
they're all there, and I remember there was one guy from the London Festival. I went to the National Film School briefly, and for cheapness, I asked Colin Young, who ran it, if I could do my sound mix there. So I had gone down the editor, and we spent a weekend mixing the sound and all that. And at the same time, there was someone from the London Festival, and he was monitoring student films from the National Film School to take it into London. And I thought, he's hanging about for the weekend too, watching all these films. So I collared him, in the canteen, and I said, I'm just next door. I've got a film I'm kind of finishing, He said, yeah, where? I said, well, you come from Scotland and we made this movie. He said, nah, no, it's too late. It's it's not going to work and all that. And then, about a month later, when we showed the film at Edinburgh, this guy was running down the corridor trying to get me. So it was. I'll never forget it. It was a kind of instant thing changed.
But Gregory's Girl was a result of the success of.
Yeah.
So you used many of the same actors, mostly the boys, are from that. We're all in that sinking feeling.
They were, yeah.
Including John Gordon Sinclair, who had a smaller part in that sinking feeling.
That's right,
Was
yeah.
he your ideal for Gregory from the very beginning?
No, it was actually while we were filming that sinking feeling that it happened with quite a few of the kids. You could just see their natural kind of talent, abilities coming out, and that happened with Gordon. He had this physicality.
He was like a silent movie comedian.
Yeah, but in that sinking feeling, I can't remember where the idea came from, but it's a heist, and the kids, they hijack a bread roll van.
Right.
To use as their getaway thing to get the sinks in. And so the night scene, that they eventually drive this van into the factory and pull the warehouse and pull the door down, and then the back door of the van opens, and the first thing that jumps out is Gordy Sinclair, and he's dressed in his sister's black tights.
It's like a ninja. He looks like a ninja. Yeah.
And the way he just jumped out the van in that first rehearsal, I whispered to Mick, I said, we found Gregory.
In a way, it's good that Gregory turned out to be the second film, because the young actors were more seasoned as film actors.
Yeah.
Terrific. But the two main women, were not part of the Glasgow group.
No, it was a funny thing. It seemed to attract more boys. It was maybe, I think, about 5-to-1 ratio. So there was just a much more limited kind of choice in the girls. And they were a little bit more diffident as well, about the idea. I don't know why. So we had to look further afield. So Dee Hepburn, she was a kind of semi-professional actress.
Was she a footballer?
No, we had trainer. It was rough and ready. She spent a couple of days at one of the local football clubs in Glasgow. I'm not a football fan, so I couldn't help her in any way.
I read once that you made it a football subject to make it more commercial, more appealing to a general audience, or a Scottish audience, I should say.
Well, it couldn't have been much else. I can't think of another sport it could have been in our neck of the woods. And also, you're absolutely right. You know, football is big in Scotland, so it would get some kind of attention just by that fact. We found Dee almost through a commercial route. She had been in some TV plays, while still at school.
And Claire Grogan.
Claire Grogan, we found her in serving in a restaurant in Glasgow, the Spaghetti Factory. And I was in there one night with a friend, actually a film school friend. Mike Radford is a filmmaker as well. He made the Il Postino.
Yeah.
So we had been at film school together. We were in the Spaghetti Factory, and I saw this waitress and I just said to him casually, I said she would be good for the movie. And he, being much more bold than me, he just kind of my friend's making a film and I think she would be good at it. So he did all the work for me.
You filmed your first movie set in a grim urban Glasgow. This is filmed in one of the new towns. Can you tell us what the new towns were? Yeah,
well, Glasgow was a kind of decay. Well, you won't need me to tell you what this means. It was a kind of decaying, Victorian industrial city, and so at that time they were knocking it down to build it up again. And also the Luftwaffe had started the process, a bit earlier, so there's still quite a lot of bomb sites and things around. But the whole city was being flattened, and the Victorian, the industrial slums were being taken down, and they were doing modern housing projects in the city. But there was still going to be, because there was so much overcrowding in the city centre at that time in the old houses, they were going to have to spread the community wider. So they had this plan to build like little satellite cities around the core of Glasgow, maybe 10, 12 miles out, give people, some fresh air and, in a nicer environment and things like that. So Cumbernauld was one of those. It was just a bare hillside. It's actually on a horrendous site, and the wind never stops there.
And also the new towns were not a big success.
No, they're not.
I've just read they tore that high school down already.
Yeah, the school where we shot it is gone already. So
kind of like some of our projects.
Yeah, that's what it was. They were put up too quickly and too cheaply.
Yeah,
and I don't think they'd done any kind of meteorological kind of assessments or anything in those days.
But you wanted it to be a young town.
That was it. The idea was that the film was about adolescence, and I had this kind of idea that it would be nice to equate that to a kind of new town, an adolescent town, if you like.
The town was the same age as the kids.
Pretty much, yeah. And I think I remember describing in the script kind of adolescent trees, rather than fully grown trees.
Right.
Which was the case.
I love when he opens the door and the toddlers come out.
Yeah, I think we just kind of tied one of them to a little kid to halfway up a tree or something.
A sapling. Yeah, I think we're only going to take a few questions from the audience because of time.
So the version we saw in 1981 or 2 was about 5 minutes shorter, and it was dubbed. Can you shed some light on that? I've never been able to.
Yeah, well, the movie ended up being picked up by Sam Goldwyn Jr., who was still running his old man's company, and he came over and watched it with us, and he said, "Look, it would do a lot better in the States if we could just hear more, if it was more clear sound, because it fairly, at that time it was an unusual accent in the movie world anyway. So I did play a hand in it. I didn't direct it or anything, but I sat in on he brought in some actors, and I think it took about 2 weeks in London in a dubbing theatre. As far as I recall, I don't think we kept any in his version. I don't think there were any of the original kids in it.
Oh, I think there were.
Were there?
Yeah, Gordy and I know Gordy and Dee did their voices. They actually did a pretty good job compared to what they did with That Sinking Feeling.
Maybe there was a kind of half and half thing, because I do remember that they had cast a voice as Gordy, but maybe after all,
Gordy and Robert Buchanan, I'm pretty sure was their voices.
Do themselves.
It was a pretty smart move on Goldwyn's part. Otherwise, it would have been
for him. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big hit here. I remember, right?
Yeah. Funny thing was, it really did work, because I remember when we had finished the 2 weeks, and on the last Friday, he wanted to have a run through it, so he turned up with his wife. The actors were all gone. It was just the technicians and myself and I think one of our producers sat down to watch it. It really delivered, because I was sitting quite close to him, and at one point he leans over to his wife. He says, "Hey, that's his kid sister."
That's a great American accent you just did.
So he had watched the film and bought the film with missing a few kind of subtleties.
Any other questions?
I just had a question. How much of the film or the script did you base on experience you had during your youth, if at all? Where did some of the inspirations for some of the scenes and events that happened in the film come from?
I think it was pretty generic, really. I don't remember anything that had lingered from my kind of adolescent development. That would have been a tragedy. It wouldn't have been a comedy. so we put that to one side. So I think in terms of the energy and the interplay, I think I really got it from the kids at the youth theatre during the course of working with them. And they were the best kind of kids, because obviously if a kid ends up at a youth theatre, there's a certain amount of extroversion, and so I used that. You can also imagine amongst a bunch of kids like that, there was little interpersonal things going on, and so I think I just stole what was happening in their milieu rather than refer back to mine. I think that's the way it worked.
Why were there no parents in the movie?
It's a great question.
Once again, it was kind of deliberate. I didn't want to kind of befuddle the territory by introducing any kind of psychology into it. That this was their world, and it's a kind of world that when the kids close the door in the summer holidays, the parents, in a way, they're quite happy to, not be involved. And it was the same reason really that we went to a new town. I just wanted to be everything about adolescence rather than, adolescents and parents and all of that. So it was quite conscious, yeah.
Well, Gregory's father's in it, but
Yeah.
he drives by,
Yeah.
Peanuts had no parents either.
Well, that was a way of nailing the point, because you saw their relationship and the kind of diversion.
And you also showed that the new towns had a different kind of traffic system, which was interesting.
Yeah.
They had no traffic lights.
That's right. No, not in the driving thing. No.
Yeah. One more question.
Yes, I am. Yeah. Yeah, I was born.
Are you kidding?
Yeah.
He's the Glaswegian. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right. Yeah, I was born right by the Clyde.
Your house was torn down?
They did. It has gone. Yeah. It was right.
They
They tore it down to make a tunnel under the
Yeah,
Clyde.
I mean, it was part of the new Glasgow.
No, it was. They took our street away specifically to make the entranceway into the Clyde Tunnel,
Right.
which is now just a road.
You were in a new town.
No, this is
Born in a new town.
no a very very old town. I was born in a Victorian tenement. Yeah, my mother paid 2 6 to the doctor. It was before the National Health Service had started.
Okay, just one more.
I'm not a Glaswegian, I'm a New Yorker,
Right.
and I wanted to thank you so much for coming back to New York. And I remember seeing your films when they came out of New York and being inspired by them, and it's been wonderful to be inspired by them again, including this one. Watching it this time, I wondered if you were inspired by Shakespeare, because now I noticed how Twelfth Night is being read in the classroom, and later the sister is reading A Midsummer Night's Dream.
It did, yeah. Well, it wasn't. Once again, it wasn't a kind of imposed thing. It just kind of developed. I suddenly kind of realised that we were filming in midsummer, and they were school kids who probably had read some Shakespeare, and so the midsummer thing, I was starting to lay on the references a little bit in the end scenes, especially with Rab Buchanan. The two boys there. They're almost like the kind of the voices of the authorial voices, the magic creatures that create things on their way to South America. And that thing at the end is quite funny with the sign. We filmed that. It was quite late in the shoot. I think the last week or so, and it was the last shot at night time after we'd done all the nice park scenes. I said, let's do the little scene on the road there. Adrian Atkinson, who was doing the props and design, she said, well, there's the thing for the boy to hold, the Caracas thing. And she had spelled it wrongly.
That might have been funnier.
Yeah. We left it in.
Oh, you did? Okay.
It gave
I
us
forgot.
It gave us a gag because it's spelt with a U. Because she was so annoyed. She said,
That's
no. I
great.
said, no, we're going to.
That's called serendipity.
Yeah.
Great.
So it gave me another gag right at the end.
Well, thank you, Bill, and welcome back after 9 years. Last time you were here. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you for listening to Film Forum Presents. If you like what you just heard, please be sure to subscribe to get future episodes and rate and review so that more movie lovers can find us. Film Forum is an independent nonprofit cinema, and our doors have been kept open for nearly 50 years thanks to the invaluable support of our members and donors. Please visit www.filmforum.org for details on membership, as well as information and showtimes for our current programming. See you at the movies.